Good day and welcome to the Dining Room Table New York City Public Safety Briefing held by Public Safety Deputy Mayor Banks. It's an update on the building parking garage that happened in New York City. There was a collapse. Unfortunately, one person was killed. Condolences to his family. Other people were injured. You have a major issue with this situation. This is the importance of having the different agencies come together and giving the public briefings. You have It's a structural issue. You have three floors. You have cars in there, some electric, some gas. People who are trying to get to their cars. They believe that they have everyone out, that no one is inside of there. It was a certified parking garage. They were to give engineering reports every so often. This year it was due by the end of this year. So they're going to give an update on what's happening and ways that they're going to be able to, things that they're going to put in place to try to prevent this from happening. They're doing a big investigation to figure out what went wrong here. So let's hear from the deputy mayor and his team.
For those of you who don't know, we had a building collapse on Ann Street in Lower Manhattan. Very, very dangerous situation. All of the agencies come together, FDNY, NYPD, Department of Buildings, NYSM. But there's a quarterback, there's a person who coordinates all of that, and that is the responsibility of Commissioner Isco from NYSM. And I'm going to now turn it over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it, sir. So first off, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the victim who was fatally injured during Tuesday's parking garage collapse. Our hearts are with the family and loved ones as they mourn their loss. I'd also say to the family, Willis Moore, as we've been in the neighborhood, people all over that neighborhood have talked about the impact that he had on them, about how friendly he was, about moments they had with him. He was beloved in that community, and it is felt down there. He's also a member of the extended New York City family as a father of a member of service. And when we were down there, and that had become sort of apparent, Phil Banks and Commissioner Sewell made it a point to send the NYPD's ESU down specifically so that it was the NYPD who was doing the dignified transfer. And I think it just says something about the fact that we who work for the city, it is a family, and Willis Moore and his family are part of that family. So please accept our heartfelt condolences for your loss. The ongoing operation at 57 Ann Street is incredibly complex. It's also very, very dangerous and remains dangerous. This work is not possible without a true interagency effort. We're not rushing through this cleanup. I know that there's a lot of folks that are looking for more information, looking for information about vehicles, about getting back into specific buildings. What I can say is safety right now is our number one priority. And we are working very hard right now to ensure the stability of the surrounding structures as we proceed with the demolition. This is also this is further complicated just by the number of vehicles that are in there. Those vehicles have gas, other fluids that can cause hazards. In addition to that, we have the added complexity of electric vehicles, which, as we've had briefings from the fire department, we know that there are all sorts of issues with electric vehicle batteries. For micromobility, that's one problem. When you're talking about large cars, it's also pretty significant issue that we need to deal with. I'll walk through briefly the timeline, and then we'll turn it over to our partners at Department of Buildings. So on Tuesday afternoon, parking garage at 57 Ann Street collapsed, fatally injuring one victim and injuring 5. A DOB inspection found that the roof, the third floor, and the second floor all collapsed into the footprint of the building. In addition, the rear wall of the building had partially collapsed, and the front wall of the building at that point in time was bulging. The parking garage was 3 stories with a cellar underneath. The DOB structural engineers determined that the parking garage was no longer structurally stable and in danger of further collapse. And then as part of the ongoing demolition and vehicle remover, city contractors on the scene now have to work to temporarily brace the adjacent building's walls. There's essentially a party wall between 57 Ann Street and adjacent building that's owned by Peace University to make sure that that wall doesn't come down in the course of demolition. This work it takes time, it's complicated, and it's also delayed our ability to continue the demolition and extraction of vehicles. For some history, a collapse of this magnitude is pretty rare across New York City. The closest recent parallel to this incident was a major building collapse that did not involve a fire or caused by construction work, would be the building collapse in Carroll Gardens back in 2020, which was also during the height of COVID. In terms of some of the impacts, neighboring residents, as a result of this ongoing work and some inspections that need to go on, there are full vacate orders at 55 Ann Street, 49 Ann Street, 27 Beekman Street, 19 Beekman Street, and then partial vacate orders at 47 Ann Street, 33 Beekman Street. These vacate orders, I understand that they're an inconvenience, but they are issued in the interest of public safety, which is our #1 priority due to the immediate hazards of this building. If you've been displaced, I know many of the residents are currently being assisted by the Red Cross. If you need assistance, you can reach out to the Red Cross. Everyone has a roof over their heads and the resources that they need. As part of the ongoing demolition and vehicle removal operations, as I mentioned, we have a lot of folks working down there. It really is an incredible effort. We have HPD, DOB, Fire Department, NYPD, the MTA, all of them working in conjunction to make sure that we're doing this safely and responsibly. For those that had vehicles inside the garage, we advise you to contact your insurance company as quickly as possible. Once vehicles are matched with owners, and I want to stress that because of the complexity of this operation and some of the things that we talked about that we need to do in order to move forward with the demolition and extraction of vehicles, that this is going to take some time, but we will reach out to find times as we move these vehicles out of that location for you to possibly come and find things that you might want in your vehicles, and also to help you with the police report that we know that you're going to need for insurance claims. If your car was in the parking garage, you can also call 311 to give them your information, but we will also be reaching out to you. Anyone whose vehicle was on the street at the time and was moved to facilitate the operation, you should also call 311. And again, having mentioned the importance of public safety and how complex and dangerous this operation remains, I really just want to urge everybody's patience as we continue this cleanup process. Lastly, I'd like to turn it over to our friends from Department of Buildings to chat a little bit about the history of the building and also to talk to us a little bit about what the licensing and procedures are for city garages.
Thank you, Commissioner Iskel. Good afternoon. I'm Kas Viljanchik, Acting Commissioner of the Department of Buildings. After collapse, we've been working on pulling archives records related to the building. And our records indicate the following: that the building was constructed in 1908, and in 1926, the building underwent an alteration, resulting in certificate of occupancy, indicating the use of the building as parking garage. In addition to this, in 1957, the building underwent additional alteration, resulting in updated certificate of occupancy, also indicating it was a garage. This certificate of occupancy remains in effect as of now. In addition, our records indicate there are 4 open ECB violations. Out of 4 open ECB violations, 2 of them related to the defects of concrete. In addition, also, in response to those violations in 2009, owner hired an engineer and filed application with Department of Building and obtained necessary permit to apply necessary repairs. The 4 open violations remains open as of now because of In order to close the violation, the owner required to submit to us certificate of occupancy. But in fact, Department of Building visited the site and observed that repair were in progress. And in addition, our record indicated necessary permits were obtained, and after that, it was even renewed for additional year. Pertaining to the current condition, this garage was cited for inspection, required inspection, as a local law implemented the new building code in effect in January of 23. In fact, the local law was implemented ahead of the building code in January of 22, requiring the owners of parking garage to inspect their structure by the licensed professional engineer. And this garage is, which located in Community Board 1, was cited for inspection, which was due for submission by the end of this year. Unfortunately, we're not able to receive this report.
So next, I just wanted us to hear from Commissioner Esposito, who has as much experience as anyone here in emergency management and just taking control over the scene. So Joe, if you can you just explain briefly, like, one, how many levels was the building? And two, the call goes in, all of the agencies come down. Just kind of paint a picture to general audience, what actually goes into effect to be able to get to the point where we're at today.
After the collapse?
Yes.
Yeah, so what happened was, which is the 4 levels, you had SUVs on the roof level, close to 50 SUVs on the level. What caused the collapse? We don't know yet. That's investigation. Our engineers will be in there. They'll be making observations, working with other agencies to see how we can determine what exactly did happen. But when that incident like happens, again, emergency management is the person that's going to coordinate the response. Being that it's a collapse without an explosion, without a terrorist attack, it really is the FD that is the primary lead on it. They come in, and everyone else supports them in their effort. And I must say, we were there in a matter of a few minutes, and the coordination between all the agencies was really, really well done, and it continues today.
Right. So, so what happens is that you have multiple agencies coming in, right? So, but there's some coordination, and that's what the primary responsibility of NYCM is, to make sure they're coordinating all of the agencies, that there's no duplicity in it, that somebody's not missing anything. And now we're in the aftermath. We're doing an investigation to determine what went wrong, certainly, and what we can learn from it so we can get that information out and correct it. And the objective, of course, is to minimize or to try to ensure as best we possibly can that this doesn't happen again with any other parking garage. So, sure.
So on the DOB front, not only have they doing a lot of work down there over the scene, the engineering, the investigation, but the team from DOB also assisted in some pet rescues the other day. So there was a number of cats that were in a building. They went in, went in to try and locate the cats in I think it was in 55 Ann Street, which is adjacent to 57 Ann Street, which is also under full vacate order right now from DOB. Residents couldn't go into the building. The DOB staff went in. Couldn't find the cats in the building at first. They figured out they escaped. They went back on Thursday afternoon, found the cats underneath the resident's bed, safely returned them to their owner. So DOB does a lot. They do the engineering. They do a lot of the contracting oversight. They do the investigations, also pet rescue. And I would say that if there are also residents that need to get into their apartments because they have a pet, because they need to get access to medication, if you're down on the scene, you can talk to some of the NYPD community affairs folks who are down there, or any of the officers, and we can arrange for you to get escorted in, or for somebody to go in if the building's too dangerous to help you get your stuff.
And all the agencies that are required to be there are there constantly. We stay there. They'll be there until the demolition is completed. And again, very important, we have interagency meetings run by emergency management every few hours. We had one at 10 o'clock this morning, where we had the latest updates on what's going forward with the pinning of that wall between Pace and the construction site, the collapse location. So we get updated every few hours. Again, it's coincided by emergency management.
Well, great. That was a lot of information and very useful, very helpful, very much appreciated. Okay.
So here you have Department of Buildings, emergency management. You have 3 floors plus a roof that collapsed, and they're giving an update of how they're going to inspect going forward and the status of this particular building. What we're going to also look at is what we're going to listen to is some of the questions from the media and the public as it relates to this same topic. So let's hear from them.
The question is for the DOB. Mr. Esposito, before you mentioned there were 47 or 50 SUVs on the roof at the time of the collapse. Do you know what the capacity was for that garage? And subsequently, how many other building garages are there within the 5 boroughs, and what's the DOB's plans going forward with inspections now that this tragedy occurred?
With relation to 57 and there were 40 some odd SUVs on the roof. They were in their certificate of occupancy. They were allowed to have 5 or more vehicles on that roof, and it could actually hold more than 40. Some actually hold 50 some odd. So it was justified in having those up there. Now, that's a rule that's put in place back in the 50s. I think that the SUVs were probably pretty similar in weight to the cars from the 50s, because those 50s cars were all heavy metal, a lot of plastic in the cars right now. And the second part of your question?
Building garages, indoor garages, are there scattered throughout the 5 boroughs? And in light of this tragedy, what's the DOB's plans going forward to inspect these garages? Is that what you guys are doing?
We have over 4,000 locations where people park their vehicles. You're talking about parking garage, you're talking about locations under buildings for the owner.
Side where the cars are parked in the building or on top of it?
The number is 4,000.
And are you guys going to do anything going forward in terms of inspections now that this has happened?
Well, as a result of this event, we've went out and did a sweep of all the garages that this company oversees. We swept those locations. That was completed yesterday, and nothing has been found that would cause us to evacuate or vacate any of those buildings.
The other buildings does this company oversee, other parking garages?
It's around 17.
Also, the folks from DOB, I visited a couple garages in Lower Manhattan today with open DOB violations, and I know that Mayor Adams had said that this was going to be an immediate start to an investigation to make sure this doesn't happen elsewhere, and not just how it happened at 57 Ann Street. So how soon, especially in Lower Manhattan with lots of open buildings, how soon can the public and garage tenants as well know for certain that the structures they're working in are safe?
Well, first thing is that, and I just really want to go back because I think it was a very interesting question. The investigation hasn't revealed yet that the 47 SUVs caused the collapse, right? But in general investigations, as Joe Esposito said earlier, and Commissioner Isco, is that they're meeting every few hours. So as investigations go, anything that comes up that indicates that it could be the immediate concern to the danger of anybody is dispatched. So we don't wait until the end of the investigation. So if anything that's coming up that determines we should be looking at this, we should be looking at that. We're actually dispatched. I met with Deputy Mayor Joshi yesterday. We had a conversation about that. She was actually going into another meeting concerning that. So as that data comes out, it's actually farmed out to the appropriate agencies to ensure that we are doing all we can to keep New Yorkers safe. And I don't know if anybody else wants to tag on to that.
Yeah, just like to clarify, the current code required owners of the garages submit to us engineer's report once per each 6 years. And this particular garage was cited to be submitted report by the end of this year.
If there is a garage with open violations, now that there's an investigation, as Mayor Adams has said, to make sure this doesn't happen at other garages, even if they have until the end of the year, is there a plan to change some sort of, make some sort of action to make sure that structures, even if they do have until the end of the year, are safe for cars that they may not be able to handle?
Obviously, our routine actions to follow up on violations, especially on violations with classified as hazardous or class 1, which kind of was riskiest one. And we follow up, we do inspection within 60 days. As I said, it's owner's responsibility to maintain the building, do periodic inspection with the professionals, and make sure that the structure is maintained in state of good
But
repair.
if you're asking that, are we looking at all of the buildings with violations? And because I just want to make sure that he's understanding your question.
New investigation, even if the city council law is in effect, that they have a certain amount of time to get an outside engineer to come look. I'm wondering if the investigation is going to change your urgency to make sure that these garages have the ability to withstand the weight of the cars in today's.
Absolutely. And that's something that we spoke with Deputy Mayor Joshi about, who's the Deputy Mayor of Operations. So the answer is absolutely. And that's what I guess I was trying to articulate it, is that when information like that comes out, immediately we're dispatched to take a look at it. So even though you may have to another 2 years, we certainly will be taking that into consideration and seeing how do we make sure that we get inspections in, or to make sure that we minimize that. But the first thing I want to be clear is that the investigation hasn't determined yet that any of the violations that were open caused this, hasn't happened yet, or in fact, were they overloaded vehicles? We haven't come to that as of yet.
More for anyone, if I may, who wants to tackle this. We spoke with one of the attendants who was there at the garage at 57 Ann Street today, who said that he and the other attendees had concerns about the structure of the building, as did the deceased Willis Moore. And I'm curious, for any of these employees who are, clocking in 8-hour days, don't feel like they're in a position of power, what can they do in their day-to-day life to tell somebody, hey, I don't know anything about Department of Buildings or code or whatever, but this may be unsafe? Who can they talk to?
The first most responsible actions will be to call 311 immediately. And I just want to say to everyone, if you see something, observe something, we treat each complaint with respect, and we send it to inspector basically to all complaints. And if someone observes deficiency in structure or in the building they're working, they immediately should notify us through 311, each complaint being triaged in order of priority and being inspected as well.
Thank you. Earlier this week, the administration reached out to New Yorkers, asking them to submit questions for the officials that have joined us here today. We will now get to as many of those as we can with the amount of time that we have left. Our first question comes from Catherine in Manhattan. This is for Department of Buildings and NYCM. With the garage collapsing in Manhattan, should the people that work near the vicinity be concerned about air quality?
Air quality?
Yes.
Air quality, yeah.
Well, we're testing the air on a regular basis, and as of right now, we have seen no indication of any hazardous material in the air.
Yeah, so when we talk about the interagency process, one of the agencies that's represented is DEP. They do a lot of work down there, and one of the things that they do is air quality monitoring, and there have been no concerns with the air quality down there.